Welcome back to Mac's Garage. Today I'm going to show you how to install a front cover seal in this happens to be a 6BT, a 5.9 liter Cummins. Anyway, I'm going to show you how to install this without the special tools. Now if you get this seal, and I believe this is a Molly unit, only it came in a different box, but I'm pretty sure that's who makes the seal. It will come with a sleeve on it. We're going to go ahead and leave it for right now, but we'll take that off when we install the seal. It also comes with this black sleeve, which is a repair sleeve for the crankshaft. So if you have any damage where the seal rides, which this one really isn't bad, I don't think we necessarily need it, but it's got a little bit of a groove, so we'll call it a day and put that on there right now so there's not issues in the future. And then this little guy, this one took me the longest amount of time to figure out where it goes because it wasn't on this engine when I took this apart. And it is a dust seal that kind of rides on here and protects the lip on the actual seal. So we'll go through the steps that I'm going to use to put this in without the proper tools. I almost forgot this. This is our depth tool. So this tells us how far we install this seal into the front cover. Now obviously the cover's already off. The seal has already been removed. So the long story short on this is this is actually one of my friend's engines. He is not here right now because he is going to stress out and freak out and just generally be a big baby while I try to put this in without the proper tools. So I decided I would get this part done before he gets here, and then he can deal with the rest of this engine stuff. So the seal's already been removed. We drove the seal, or actually he drove the seal backwards out of it. I would say that if you're going to do this, actually drive it the other way, because I'm going to put it in from the front side, which is what Dodge instructions say. Now, one of the things you need to do is support the case on the opposite side, and realistically you can drive the seal from either direction. I'm going to try to drive it from the front because I think that's going to be easier for me with what I've got to work with. So I have this very large used bearing race. It fits very nicely on the back side here. So it's got 2 layers of metal. You want that to sit down nice and level. I'm going to set that on the ground. Here's my cover. I'm not sure how well you can see the blocking apparatus, but I've just got blocks of wood to get this so it lays nice and level. It makes a good contact all the way around. From there, I'm going to take this sleeve and I'm actually going to remove it for right now. You can put that back in, just be very careful with it later. And then I'm going to take our install tool and I'm actually going to use that to drive it from the front side. Now this seal has a red covering on it, so it does not require any type of sealant into it. If you wanted to, you could put something on there. I've sometimes used some black silicone, things like that. And I'm pretty sure this is going to work, so we'll find out here very shortly. Okay, so I've got my seal, nothing on it because it's got the red lip, so I shouldn't need it. I'm going to use my seal depth tool, and then I'm going to use this little guy right here, which I found this is, again, I don't have the special tools. I am in a pretty well-equipped shop, so I have other stuff. This fits nicely down into the install tool, so I'm not going to be stressing any part of the tool, and it should allow me to install this nice and easily. The part underneath there, it would probably be nice if it was a softer material like wood, but this is going to be all right. So I've got my piece of material there. I've got my cross across the top. And I'm just going to kind of gently tap this in. I can see it's going on this side, so I'm going to move back over here. Okay, so it's pretty evenly going in right now. So I'm going to put my bar back on the top. Just kind of keep watching it, make sure that it's going in the same amount all the way around, and if it's not, kind of direct your blows to the area that it's not going in as much. So like right there. And that's pretty even there. And that's actually really level all the way around. We've now hit the point where it is even with the whole front hub. Okay, so we just heard a bit of a tone change. So the key with this seal, the real key here is not the depth. I mean, the depth does matter some, but the real key is to make sure that that seal is even inside of here so that we have a nice even depth all the way around. Now, before I even pop that out, I can flip this over and I can eyeball it and look, and it looks pretty dang good. If you want to, you can measure it to make sure it's perfect, but that is nice and centered up and squared and good. And you can tell that the installation sleeve, or actually I guess you can't tell, but the installation sleeve is evenly down all around this front hub. It does stick in, or at least this one did, so let's see if I can pop it out of there without hurting anything. Okay, so now that depth installer tool just comes right out of there. The seal is nice and evenly installed. At this point, I'm going to take my plastic unit here, look it over, make sure it really looks good, and I think this one looks good. So we're going to very carefully and gently reinstall our installation sleeve, which I'll try to do this on camera. Alright, so we're just gonna take our sleeve, slowly and gently work it back in. Okay, that's gonna be really critical to putting this on the engine properly. Okay, so that's in. Again, this dust seal will eventually go out over the outside. But we're not there yet, so I'm just going to set this one off to the side. Bring the camera in. You can realistically put this sleeve on before or after the front seal. I did the front seal first because had I messed that up, I probably would have gotten a seal that doesn't require a sleeve. This is, if you've done many sleeves, this is a beefy sleeve. This is like 3 times the thickness of most of the repair sleeves that I've done. And it comes with a tapered end, so if you look down inside here, there is a taper towards this side that's going to aid you in installing it. Before we go to install this, and it's already been done on this engine, make sure that the end of your crankshaft is nice and clean. This one had a little bit of a rusty lip at the outer edge, so we just took some 320 grit emery cloth and cleaned up the rusty area before we started. Some of these sleeves require a retaining compound. This one, it claims from everything that I've seen, does not. And the sheer thickness of this makes me think that it's probably going to be a pretty beefy unit on its own. So I'm going to take a little bit of oil to make this slide on a little easier. Again, this is not really normal, but from what I can see on this particular sleeve, that's going to be a thing that we do here. So we're oiling this up, and theoretically this sleeve will actually stay removable. So it doesn't go all the way down to the gear, because then you wouldn't be able to get a puller on it, but it does stay removable. So we'll take our tapered side in, line that thing up. Again, like on the other one, I usually use a used or an old race. This one's been used a few times, but it is the right size where it's going to work pretty good for this. Now, this very large, rather heavy-duty sleeve will kind of self-align itself as it goes on, but just kind of watch it. Make sure that you are putting it on evenly, which I already got this one a little bit off. Okay, so as we bring it back straight, maybe. I'm working in a rather inconvenient space today, but that is now pretty straight. So I'm gonna grab my block of iron so I can hit in the center. Line this stuff all up. And simply drive it home. Now I'm getting really close to the edge of the crankshaft, so you're going to hear a tone change when I get down to that. Okay, so that last little smack gave us a tone change. Now if you buy the installation tool, which realistically you probably should, it will actually take this and set it back onto the crankshaft a little bit. Now, I don't have the installation tool, and honestly, it's set back beyond the radius a little bit on its own just because of the installer driver that I was using, or the race is almost the right size to do that. So there's kind of a couple of different things that you could do here. One, you could get a punch and kind of drive around the outside to set that up. Now there's a couple risks with that. One, you could damage the actual crankshaft itself a little bit, or two, you could damage the sleeve, which is not going to be good for your seal life. When we look at our balancer, it's pretty much flat. It's got a very slight raise beyond where it goes, but honestly, I think that's just rust and corrosion. If it was in nicer shape, I believe it would be totally flat, or less rusty shape. There's nothing really wrong with it. It's just rusty and whatever. So the installer that this particular seal came with actually is going to fit this really well. It does go over the crankshaft, just barely. So we'll take that, block it up. And I don't want to go on here too far because I want to leave room to get a puller back in here behind this should it need to be removed and replaced later down the road. So I'm going to line everything up. And drove it back a little bit, not very much. Okay, so that drove back, and I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but there's probably about a 1/16 of an inch there, which is going to be plenty of recess. And it still leaves us room to get behind this sleeve should we ever need to. And this is still in good enough shape that if we needed to set another seal, we could use it for that as well. So now we've got the seal installed. I've got the sleeve back in here, which is going to drive over that, and a new gasket. So what I'm going to do is take this cover, line our seal installer up with the crankshaft. I'm going to grab one of our kind of longer bolts. There are different length bolts in this case. I'm just going to use a longer bolt up in the top corner, and that actually might be out of frame for you, but right next to the oil fill, I'm just running a couple of the longer bolts in, and those are going to hold the cover up while I do the rest of it. So that'll give it a nice amount of room to move around as it needs to. There is a tool to center this up on the crankshaft, but the reality is that the seal will also center itself if you let it. So now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take and slowly push this on. This installer is going to spread the seal as it goes out over the crankshaft. So there we go. The seal is now on. The cover is up tight. And I'm going to start putting the bolts in. The first place I picked to put a bolt in happens to be where we need one of those long bolts. Okay, so I've got all of these started. Now, gravity is going to be pulling down on the seal a little bit, but honestly, I can't move it any which way, so it's probably going to be good. So I'm just going to go ahead and start snugging up these bolts. Now, as much as I just kind of put a seal in without the proper tools, I don't like it when bolts back out, so I'm going to torque all of these to the proper spec, which happens to be 18 foot-pounds. They're a 10 millimeter head, but they're an 8 millimeter bolt. Okay, so we'll do that in a crisscross pattern where we aren't just going around in a circle, and we'll speed it up through this part too. All right, so we can't really, I don't have a deep enough socket to fit on these crank sensor ones, so click. Click. There we go. All right, now we're ready to actually pull this sleeve out, which I should be able to just grab and pull out of there, and it did. So that's good. That did its job. It allowed the seal to slide on nice and easy and do what it's supposed to do. The last thing we're going to do on the seal itself is this dust seal, and if you're looking on the internet, this is a real hard to find information on, but it protects the actual seal itself from damage. So it's just going to work its way on, maybe not quite by hand. All right, so that seal is now installed. It rides on the crankshaft. It's actually going to spin with the crankshaft, so you don't want it too far down in there where it's actually running into the seal. You want it to just lightly run. So that'll be good there. Then we're going to reinstall our balancer. Oops, knocking the crank sensor all over. Before you get too far into this, just take a look at it. Look at the rubber, make sure it looks reasonably good. And there's no things sitting out on the balancer itself. And this will actually, once you line it up, put your bolts in. Once the bolts are all in, you can basically just kind of smack that back into place, and it's in there and bottomed out. Alright, so this engine is out of the truck, which makes this fairly easy, especially since we're not using the flex plate or engine thing on there. So we just jammed a pry bar in the back to stop it from turning. These bolts are 92 foot-pounds. There's one. Alright, so that's it. That's the seal installation. I just went for it. We could have left this off and checked to see if it was leaking, but it's going to be good. So there you go. That's how to install the seal and the sleeve without the special tools. I think this is the only video that really has that. At least I couldn't find any others. So thanks for watching. Again, hit the like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff that helps with the algorithm things. And I'll see you later.